to score the best scoops, and they took their jobs very seriously. As the two men settled in for lunch, they sized each other up. The lanky Siskel, who was just about to celebrate his 30th birthday, was trying to compensate for his accelerating hair loss by growing out a painter's brush mustache and an enormous set of sideburns. The pudgy Ebert, 33, had no such problem with male pattern baldness. His hair was so thick it threatened to overtake his forehead entirely as it drooped down toward a pair of thick glasses. The two men were so at odds, even their hairstyles were diametrically opposed to one another. But Siskel and Ebert weren't strangers. In fact, this was a reunion of sorts. A few months earlier, the two men had set aside their mutual hostility long enough to shoot a pilot at Chicago's public television station, WTTW. While local newscasts in New York City had begun adding film critics to their lineup of reporters by the early 1960s, this pilot, titled Opening Soon at a Theater Near You, represented a totally new concept for a TV series. Instead of a lone critic presenting themselves as a singular authority on a work of art, Opening Soon showcased two film critics in conversation, discussing their respective reactions to the latest movies in town. Here's another thing everyone agrees about. The pilot was a mess. Roger and Gene had each worked in television prior to Opening Soon, but you wouldn't know it from their performance. Despite their experience, the pair hosted the pilot like they had never even watched a TV show before, much less appeared on one. Ebert's enormous glasses reflected every light in the TV studio whenever he so much as glanced at his co-host, and in wide shots, the camera occasionally glimpsed him nervously fidgeting with the cuff of his pants. For his part, Siskel flubbed the title of the show, calling it Opening for Us at a Theater Near You, just before the closing credits. The unlikely partners didn't necessarily act like they hated each other on camera, but they both looked slightly miserable and intensely nervous, as if someone standing just off camera had trained a gun on them and forced them to discuss the 1975 Anthony Newley musical, Mr. Quilp. A few weeks after the Opening Soon pilot aired, WTTW's head of programming, Dick Bowman, called Flum into his office for a meeting. After helping create an award-winning PBS documentary on criminal courts and a successful series for parents titled Look at Me, Flum had recently joined the WTTW staff. "Do you like movies?" Bowman asked. "I love movies," Flum responded. "What would you think about doing a show about movies?" "I would love to do a show about movies." Just like that, Flum became the new producer of Opening Soon at a Theater Near You. Bowman wanted her to keep the basic concept, two critics debating recent movies. Beyond that, Flum had carte blanche to rework the busted pilot and even to replace either or both of its hosts if she saw fit. Whatever the problems with the original Opening Soon, Flum recognized the format had a lot of possibilities. In the mid-1970s, American movies were on a significant upswing. 5 months before Opening Soon premiered on WTTW, a relatively unknown 28-year-old director named Steven Spielberg had shocked Hollywood by turning a B-level thriller about a police chief, a scientist, a drunken fisherman, and a great white shark into the highest-grossing picture in the history of the industry. Spielberg's Jaws took the movie world by storm, and it was just one of dozens of landmark movies released during the decade. In the first half of the 70s, a slew of films pushed the boundaries of mainstream cinema with stories full of mature themes, shocking sexuality, and frank depictions of violence and drug use. In the second half of the 70s, other filmmakers like Spielberg and a talented USC graduate named George Lucas redefined what financial success in the film industry could look like, with massive hits that grossed hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office. The blockbuster was born. Siskel and Ebert were part of a new generation of film critics raised on movies and just as in love with them as these young directors. It was their job to reckon with these new developments in American cinema. But a movie review in print could only describe its subject. On television, a critic could include clips, giving the audience a real taste of what the film looked and sounded like. And in the 1970s, footage from new films was very hard to come by outside of actual